investors. Welcome to Stocks to Watch. I'm Ashley Berry, and today we're highlighting Sidney Resources Corp, listed on the OTCID as SDRC. This is a U.S.-based exploration company with a strong focus on precious metals and critical minerals in the mineral-rich state of beautiful Idaho. With projects spanning historic mining districts and growing investor interest in domestic resource development, Sidney Resources is positioning itself for long-term opportunity. And joining us now is the company's CEO, Sean-Rae Zalewski. Sean, thanks so much for joining us.
Pleasure to be here, Ashley. Thank you for having me.
Yes, great to have you. Really excited to hear your story, as our audience is as well. So for those who may not be familiar with the company, Sidney Resources really has significant properties in Idaho, as I mentioned. And from your experience, what would you say makes that state one of the best jurisdictions in the U.S. for mineral exploration and development? Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos.
Absolutely. As a tier one jurisdiction, Idaho is ideal for developing corporations. It both encompasses the political de-risking and the SPEED Act by Governor Brad Little. He signed that recently to ensure that there is the act by the corporations to move forward with the coupling and joint interest of policy. Huge movement by Governor Little, and we appreciate that. So friendly political jurisdiction, great mining assets, great porphyry systems, and the batholith in the area that we are in really makes for an ideal scenario for developing both the critical minerals that the U.S. needs in rare earths, as well as those precious metals in the area, as well as platinum group assets.
Yeah, which are so important in the United States and to be operating in the United States. You, just to dive a little bit deeper, you're in the historic Warren Mining District in Idaho, among other locations. Maybe you could give us a little bit more in depth on the potential of the district and what notable mines or discoveries are nearby there.
So in the district, it was an incredible producing district for years. From 1860 forward, huge gold rush. The asset continued to produce into the 30s with the federalization of gold. Those government interests really shut down the area. The individuals closed their mines, they blew them up. They didn't want to lose those assets with the federalization of gold. So there wasn't a lack of production that led to the closure. It was really a change of that political environment nearly 100 years ago that changed that. So the area is incredibly rich in its assets, and whether it be the Little Giant, various assets we've purchased recently with the Unity silver and gold assets to the south of us, closing on Pony Meadows and Silver Monarch this year as well. We've expanded greatly from 53 acres in our original footprint to nearly 5,000 regionally. We've grown exponentially, and we'll continue to do so.
And it sounds like, speaking of Silver Monarch, there's also Lucky Ben, Unity, Walla Walla. Those are
Absolutely.
all projects. Yeah,
Absolutely.
maybe you could sort of walk us through the assets and potential you see across the portfolio, because we're talking about a lot of acreage here.
Absolutely. So we have 208 acres of private land within those acres in Warren and Walla Walla. So those are two separate districts about 10 miles from each other, and they are engaged in the development, or we're engaged in the development of those assets as we continue to build stopes. And so stoping is, tunneling down and getting into the asset itself. So we've had hundreds and hundreds of assays. There's been historical records of production in, Little Giant, Lucky Ben, as you mentioned, Walla Walla, the various other assets we've extracted. We have bulk samples, and we have independent assays that show those densities at multiple ounces per ton of gold, silver, and as of 2024, we began making our first doré, and we ran into a confounding variable, and that at first was very frustrating. But as we understood the asset, we saw that was actually platinum group elements, iridium, platinum, palladium, etc., ruthenium, that full spectra which we have published that information. And then historically, there's also been a great rare earth stance there. So monzonite is heavily present in the region, up to 50%. So we've been evaluating that. We are creating rare earth concentrates for a global player in that space, which is located regionally. And we will be sending off our 5 kilogram sample of concentrate. Our goal is over 50% concentrate in rare earths in that sample without any chemicals. So just gravity, which is huge. So we hope to have that by the end of the week. And that'll be out, and then it'll be independently tested by 5 labs, as well as the company that's looking at the offtake for that. So huge progress for the company, huge developments, multi-ounce per ton in silver, gold, platinum, palladium, ruthenium, et cetera, osmium, iridium. It's a very complex ore. And as we drift through that asset, we understand that development. Off vein, we have more of the platinum group metals. On vein, it becomes relatively more simple. So we drifted into a vein last week from a top stope. So our top tunnel, we built a stope down to it and achieved penetration of that vein, and are currently using our exploration mill and exploration test facility to see the total density of that asset, which is looking very favorable.
Yeah, I like how you explain that. Drifted into a vein. It's like, you never know what you're going to get. So the excitement around this, especially when you're there on the ground, must really be infectious with your team, yes?
Yeah, our geologist and our metallurgist team, Guy Seiko and Steve Dobson, have been incredibly just poignant in their focus. They've been right where we need to be. We pre-drill where we're going to be drifting, so it isn't a blind hope that we get there. So we did have a fracture in a lower tunnel of the vein, so it wasn't where we expected, but in the upper tunnel, it's right where we expect it to be, and that's been a great yield so far. So we should, be making those gold bars soon, platinum bars, palladium bars. Those are where the assets we have separated at test facilities, and we are looking to do that in a macro capacity. We're also moving to independent third-party bulk samples so that can be tested as well on top of our lab that we built in Emmett, Idaho.
Yeah, you mentioned members of your core leadership team. I'm really excited to share with our audience that we actually will be interviewing them, and that will be following this interview with you. So very exciting there to really dive deep into exactly what it is you're doing on the ground and sort of key priorities in the near term, far term. So I'll ask you, Sean-Rae, 3 concise statements. What would you say makes Sidney Resources Corp a compelling and potentially undervalued investment opportunity right now?
Well, with the U.S. supply chain shifting, with especially China's drift away from supplying those critical minerals, and the U.S. government making it a priority to move into these critical minerals and precious metals as well as rare earths. We saw that movement a long time ago in the energy space and the semiconductor space. And now that same effect is happening today in Congress and from the president's desk. So we're looking with our lobbyists to participate in that growth, but we have the rare earths in concentrate. We do have the platinum group metals in our ore at significant quantities, and we have gold and silver. So for those 3 things, I'd say rare earths, gold, and platinum, right? So those groups are the ones that will win in time. And our inferred asset reserve on one vein, which we expanded to control 22 of what is the same vein that is expanded over the last several hundred million years, is inferred at 9,000 feet at a depth of 800 feet. With inflation of those assets at about $11 billion in that one vein alone. Our market cap sits around 200 million. So just that realization of that one vein is a huge boon. So that's the little giant vein that we're accessing today. And off that, we acquire Unity and Silver, which is another, 10,000 feet of that same vein, which is contiguous. So extrapolate that. We also had Dr. Marissa Acosta out this summer from the University of Alaska Fairbanks, preeminent geologist, and she believes that this system may go as deep as 3,000 feet. So if you extrapolate depth in a conal structure, as it gets deeper, it becomes more rich. So that's incredible when we're already looking at multi-ounce assets per ton. And then you look at the depth of that and you extrapolate on a conal shape, those numbers get pretty incredible pretty quickly. Multiply that even 11 by 22, we're looking at a pretty incredible picture. At depth, it gets even more rosy. So very excited for the team, very excited for where we are. And, we're looking at a, multi-$100 billion asset in the region. And to substantiate that, we did have a neighbor move in next door, Thomas Kaplan, who is a brilliant expert in the commodity plays, and he recently made that acquisition to the northeast of us for that rare earth component. And that just substantiates exactly why we made those defensive moves to expand from where we were to have regional control.
Fantastic. It sounds to me like the little vein that could when you're
Absolutely.
explaining it, right? Well, I so appreciate your time. Projects in Idaho's proven mining districts, and really you have a clear strategy for advancing exploration. Sidney Resources Corp really represents a US-based story to watch as demand for critical minerals, as Sean-Rae said, and metals continues to climb. Sean-Rae Zalewski, CEO of Sidney Resources Corp, again listed on the OTCID as SDRC. Thank you so much for joining us here on Stocks to Watch.
Thank you for having me, Ashley. Have a great day.